The lights in the conference hall beat down on my skin, hot and bright, making my forehead prickle with sweat before I'd even spoken a word. I stood at center stage, hands gripped around the edge of the podium, fighting off the restless quake in my chest. Rows and rows of faces stared at me, some bored, some cold, some barely pretending to care. I recognized a few: Mr. Massenge from the neighborhood, Aunt Martha perched stiffly next to my cousin Samuel, and in the third row, my youngest brother with his hood pulled up, as if he too was embarrassed for me. The first slide on the projector, Afribotics, building Nairobi's future from the ground up, glared back at me in bright blue letters. My throat was dry, tongue rough against the roof of my mouth. I could still taste the milk and tea I'd gulped down that morning, sick and sour. It's only 5 minutes, just get through 5 minutes, I repeated to myself, eyes darting to the clock at the back wall. The seconds ticked by slow and cruel. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice wobbling. I looked directly at the panel of investors, suit jackets immaculate, faces drawn in tight, skeptical lines. My name is Daniel. I am a robotics engineer, and today I want to show you how we can change the face of industry, education, and daily life in Nairobi. Someone coughed, the sound echoed too loud, jerking my nerves. The next sentences tumbled from my lips, rehearsed but suddenly empty, as if I'd spat out each word before thinking. I talked about affordable modular robotics, kits kids could assemble themselves, robots to irrigate urban farms, small machines to repair potholes in the streets. I pressed the button for the next slide and the computer froze. The picture of my prototype, the neat, boxy robot with its painted Maasai Shuka finish, lingered only halfway loaded on the screen. A few people snickered, trying to mask it with sudden coughs. Heat crept up my neck. Technology, sometimes refuses to cooperate, I murmured, forcing a smile. My brother ducked his head further. Aunt Martha's lips pinched. Samuel rolled his eyes, shifting in his seat. If you'll, just look here, I said, holding up the real prototype in my hands. My voice was thin as my arms trembled under the weight of everyone watching, waiting for me to fail. The demo ran clumsy, jittery, but working. The robot whirred awkwardly across the table, its little tongs struggling to pick up a plastic bottle. At the critical moment, the arm jammed. The robot beeped, shuddered, and then snapped the bottle off the table with a clatter. Laughter erupted, honest, sharp, and unkind. That's supposed to fix Nairobi's roads, someone called, more to their friend than to me. The room went blurry behind a slick of tears I refused to let fall. My tongue felt useless in my mouth. I stumbled through the rest of it, words lifeless, eyes focusing anywhere but the crowd. 5 minutes had never felt longer. Afterward, I left the stage to a thin spatter of forced applause and made for the exit. Someone, maybe Samuel, hissed, "Why not just get a normal job, Dan?" As I walked the cracked concrete back towards my uncle's car, the day reeked of disappointment, burnt coffee, and the sharp tang of lost hope. I wish I could say I found solace at home, but home was worse. At dinner, silence stretched wide as the savannah. My mother carved ugali with a little too much force. My father kept his eyes locked on the news, not even pretending to listen when my brothers talked about football or latest trends in Nairobi West. The only topic anyone seemed truly interested in was how I'd embarrassed myself, again, with my metal toys. My uncle chortled, patting my back a bit too hard. "Next time, maybe your robot can carry your pride back for you, eh?" Laughter swelled around the table, bitter and bright. I told myself I didn't care, that I could take the mockery, that one day somehow I would show them. But when night slid around my ankles and I lay awake in my old bedroom staring up at the cracked ceiling, their words turned into stones, pressing all the air out of my chest. I considered giving up, more than once. Nairobi is a city that demands you keep your dreams practical. Engineer, yes, it's respectable if you're building someone else's project, fixing someone else's gadgets, safely nested in a salary, not daring to dream things could be otherwise. But stubbornness runs in my blood, maybe that's all I had left. For 2 years I watched others take easier paths. My brother joined a telecom startup, Samuel became a customs officer. Mom found her rhythm at the new market in Kawangwaya, and every dinner was a subtle highlight reel of everyone else's steady jobs and safe lives. And me, I took on odd contracts, fixing electrical circuits, writing code for companies that never put my name on anything. I tinkered long after midnight in the back room with the prototype, sometimes just to prove it could still move even if I couldn't. It was only after I saved up enough for a one-way ticket to Shenzhen, a place where the city itself feels like a machine humming with invention, that my hope rekindled. My father shook his head at the door, not even asking why I was leaving. The only words he offered as I waved goodbye were, "Don't come back until you've grown up." Shenzhen was chaos and wonder rolled into one. Streets alive with neon food stalls sizzling with spice and oil, apartments stacked on each other like someone built upward just to spite gravity. I spent my days in the crowded, airless workshops learning to solder faster, to code more efficiently, to recognize which investors wanted innovation and which just wanted profit. My Chinese was terrible, but necessity is the best teacher. I slept on a mat in the corner of a friend's walk-up, eating instant noodles, the sharp tang of ginger and heat filling my nose every night. I spent every shilling, every borrowed yuan on spare parts, fast Wi-Fi and bus tickets to conferences where nobody knew who I was. In a small coworking space lit by flickering bulbs, I built the third version of my robot. I named it Shujaa after my mother's favorite Swahili word for hero. The old Maasai Shuka design was still there, but now the tongs actually worked. The bot could identify objects and reroute its path. It didn't just scoop bottles anymore, it sorted, stacked, even learned from its mistakes. When I ran out of money again, I streamed a live demo on Facebook, pleading in broken Swahili and rusty English for any support. Some laughed in the comments, but a few strangers reached out. A woman from Mombasa offered a test site, her classroom in Kilifi. Makerspaces in Nairobi started reposting my work. A South African investor, impressed by my persistence if not my product, wired me enough to get home and try again. This time, when the plane touched down at Jomo Kenyatta, the smoke and dust of Nairobi felt like a promise, not a curse. Returning wasn't triumphant. I came back not in triumph but in exhaustion. My father glanced up from his paper as I entered, bags dangling from tired hands. He grunted. My mother hugged me, but I could feel the tension in her jaw. Days blurred. I taught kids at Jakomba how to assemble simple bots from e-waste. I offered free classes in the church basement, inviting anyone who wanted to learn to code or handle a screwdriver. At night I worked in a rented garage in Westlands, patching together parts and promises. Word got around, schools called asking for workshops. Soon I had a team, 2 women from Kybra who could program cleaner than any university graduate, a former mechanic, a university dropout with a gift for drone navigation. Together we built a factory from nothing, a hot, dusty workshop smelling of solder, plastic and hope. 1 year after I returned, the new version of Shujaa rolled down the alley off River Road, its sensors mapping potholes and cracks. It dragged a small cart of asphalt, patching holes as it crept along. Passers-by paused, watching the little robot work through the dusty afternoon. Some took photos, some laughed, but the city council called. Soon after, 4 cities in Kenya wanted pilot projects. The orders came in, staccato and hopeful. For the first time there was money, not just for me, but for everyone I worked with, for their families, for the kids who lined up every week wanting to touch the metal skin of possibility. This is where the story turns. The annual Nairobi Tech Symposium announced its lineup, big international firms, politicians, and tucked in at the edge of the schedule, Afri-Botics. The road to homegrown innovation. I stared at the email, half expecting it to dissolve into spam, but it was real. Invitations went out. I sent one to each family member, not because I wanted to show off, but because part of me ached to show a different story. Aunt Martha replied with a curt, "If it's not too late in the evening." Samuel didn't answer. My father said nothing, but I heard him tell my uncle, "Let's see what he's cooked up this time." The morning of the event was electric. I wore a suit borrowed from a friend, shoes buffed until they shone. The convention center was packed, sunlight slanting through wall-high windows, glass and steel sharp as ambition. Backstage, my hands shook, but not with dread, maybe with anticipation. My team clustered together, adjusting the robot's controls, checking batteries and sensors. I looked for my family in the crowd. There was my mother, her hair wrapped in pink kitenge, standing tall. Aunt Martha, pursed and alert, listened to someone lecture about blockchain. My father stood near the exit, face unreadable, arms folded. Samuel arrived late, perched at the edge of a folding chair, one headphone dangling from his ear. They called my name. The lights were just as bright, but this time my spine was straight. "Good morning," I began. My voice carried deeper and steadier than before. "My name is Daniel. Today I want to introduce you to a robot built not in Silicon Valley, but here, by Kenyans for Kenya." I clicked the remote. The video flashed onto the giant screen, Shujaa rolling over torn roads near Kybra, patching holes as children watched. A teacher in Kilifi smiled as her students worked together to build their own bots. A time-lapse of the team smiling, laughing, arguing over circuit boards drew quiet from the room, and beside me the real Shujaa V4 now sat gleaming red and black. I bent, touched the key, and it whirred to life. The crowd leaned forward. I guided it with a gesture and it spun, laser mapping the floor, then trundling to the edge of the stage where someone had, with a wink from the organizers, scattered trash and broken tiles. Shujaa scanned, beeped, and smooth, graceful, picked up each piece, sorted them, carried cracked tile into a container, wiped the area, then wheeled back to center stage. The hall erupted, not with laughter, not this time, but with applause. The kind that rolls out slow and deep from people who are truly moved. I blinked away tears. I was angry at first, angry at the years lost to mockery, at family who'd given up on me. But in that moment, a deep, serene calm washed over me. I wasn't here to prove them wrong. I was here to prove us right. During questions, I fielded queries in Swahili and English. I made sure to thank my team, my mentors, every person who'd told me no and taught me how to turn it into a yes. After the session, people swarmed the demo floor. A teacher gripped my hand, eyes shining. "You have given our children hope," she whispered. Behind her in the throng, I saw my father. The afternoon light made his face look older, carved deep with lines, but there was something new in his eyes. He walked towards me, slow, hesitant. For a moment we just stood together, no words left. Then he reached out, pulled me into a brief, rough embrace and grumbled, "Well done, Daniel." Aunt Martha drifted over, cheeks flushed red. "I didn't think this was possible," she admitted, voice twisted between pride and confusion. "But you made something beautiful." Her grip was awkward, but it meant something. Samuel, hands jammed into his pockets, nodded. "Looks cool, man. Maybe you can finally pay for your own drinks, eh?" We laughed. The old anger, that hot, twisting thing inside, dissolved, leaving only the steady warmth of serenity. The walk home that evening was slow, deliberate. Nairobi's city lights blinked on as dusk settled, their wattage reflected in puddles along the broken road. Kids played football near the curb, laughter trailing like birdsong. I turned the corner, past the kiosk where I'd begged for internet vouchers, past the church where I'd run my first workshop. At my parents' gate I paused. My mother opened the door before I knocked, as if she'd been waiting all along. Inside, over steaming plates of sukuma and stew, the dinner table was different. My family huddled close, talking over each other, marveling at how the little bot from our estate had become the star of the city. My mother squeezed my hand, eyes shining. "You brought something special home, Daniel," she said. I thought of my team back at the workshop, their laughter and their sweat, the tinkered parts, patched dreams, endless cups of chai. I thought of the city outside, the city that had mocked me, doubted me, then embraced me. Maybe I'd returned with something more than success. Maybe what I brought home was the possibility that anything, even a ridiculous dream, could take root here, grow, stretch, and blossom in the red dust of Nairobi.